Yeah, Leviticus is an interesting book. Historically, it is one of the first books actually that is taught in synagogues for children, interestingly enough. But in the church, it seems that it's one of the most overlooked books. Nobody really likes to focus on it because on the surface it seems such like it's just a bunch of rules and a bunch of laws, and yet at the same time, it sits squarely as Leviticus is a foundational book. It is the foundation for the gospel, really. You really can't appreciate, and I use the word appreciate specifically for books like Hebrews. You really can't understand, fully appreciate Hebrews unless you first understand Leviticus. Leviticus is, if you look at the kind of the context within which it sits, you have Genesis, you have the overarching, major themes of scriptures: creation, fall, redemption, glorification. And you see the first three in the first early chapters of Genesis. You see creation, you see the fall, and then quickly you see the the good news, the proto-gospel in Genesis 3:15. So you see God early on starting to unfold his plan of redemption. And Leviticus sits right there, right next to it. You have God calling his people in Abraham and establishing them as a people. In Exodus, he saves them and establishes them as a nation. And with that, if you will, he has a people and a constitution, so to speak. So the Ten Commandments is the beginning of that, and Leviticus really elaborates on that. So you have God calling his people, saving them, establishing them as a nation, giving them a constitution, and also giving them, starting at least a pattern for a place of worship. If you look at the end of Exodus, really the last 15 chapters of Exodus have to do with the elements of the tabernacle and the future temple, the tabernacle and how to build the tabernacle, and how important that is, because that's the primary place of worship. It represents the dwelling place of God. And that's a huge topic, of course. That's another topic for another discussion. But the presence of God amongst his people is very important. So you have him talking about, in Leviticus, if you will, the constitution for the people. So you have the people, the constitution, and from Deuteronomy through to Joshua, you have the land. So all that is necessary for the covenant people to exist and to live and worship for God. Of course, the overarching theme of Leviticus, maybe I can give you some more bullet points as to reasons for reading and studying Leviticus, is that, first of all, the overarching theme of Leviticus is, of course, holiness, the holiness of God, and therefore the holiness of his people, whom he requires to be holy in order to be able to worship him and have a relationship with him. So holiness is one of the themes of Leviticus. Also, that the fact that he set up a priesthood, a system of worship, and prescribing what is appropriate and what is inappropriate for the worship of God. At the same time, you see the sacrificial system, which is the main part of Leviticus, especially the first 6-7 chapters. The sacrificial system points to a couple of things: the sinfulness of humankind, of each individual, and the need for redemption, the need for atonement because of that sin, because sin separates from God, and we can't have a relationship with God unless the sins are dealt with. And so atonement is necessary. That's why the sacrifices are so important. One of the most important reasons for studying Leviticus is because it prefigures the gospel, it prefigures Christ. Everything in Leviticus points to Christ, who himself is the great high priest. And that's, again, one of the elements, one of the main elements of Leviticus is the priesthood. Jesus is the great high priest. He is the best priest you can have. Not only that, he is himself the sacrifice. And so all the sacrifices point to Christ. So And Christ's life on earth fulfills everything in Leviticus, the life he lives, because another big part of Leviticus is the holiness codes, the cleanliness codes. Christ fulfills all that. Christ fulfills the role of a high priest. Jesus fulfills the fact that he himself is the sacrifice who atones for the sins of his people on the cross. And all these pictures are there in Leviticus, and they're all fulfilled in Christ. So that's the greatest reason to study Leviticus.